My name is Miriam. I was born in a small village surrounded by green fields. I lived the happiest days of my life with my mother and father. We were a simple, humble family, but our lives were full of love. One day, everything changed. My parents were on their way to the market to buy groceries when tragedy struck. A speeding car hit them, leaving me an orphan, alone in this world. I still remember that day like a never-ending nightmare. The villagers tried to console me, but no one could fill the void they left behind. A few days later, my uncle came to take me to his home. I thought I would find safety there, but it was the beginning of a new kind of suffering. My uncle's house was small, but it wasn't just the walls that were cold. It was the people too. From the very first day, I felt unwelcome. My uncle's wife looked at me as if I were a burden she didn't want to carry. She often told my uncle, loud enough for me to hear, "Why do we have to take care of her? We already have enough problems." My suffering began immediately. I woke up early one cold morning to her harsh voice waking me. "Get up. There's a lot of work to do today." All the house chores became my responsibility, from washing dishes to scrubbing clothes with my small hands. If I made even a tiny mistake, she would yell at me, calling me lazy. Sometimes, I'd finish all the work late at night, exhausted, sitting in a corner crying silently so no one could hear me. The room I slept in was tiny, with no window and no bed, just an old mat on the floor where I'd collapse from exhaustion every night. Occasionally, I would wake up to the sound of rats, terrified but with nowhere else to go. Despite everything, I loved going to school. It wasn't easy. My clothes were worn out, my shoes barely held together, and I walked the long distance under the scorching sun to get there. School felt like a sanctuary from the hell I lived in at home. My teacher, Ms. Salma, noticed my tired appearance and once asked me, "Miriam, why do you always look so sad?" I would smile and say, "I'm fine, don't worry." The truth was, I lived in constant fear. Even when I returned home, I dreaded facing my uncle's wife, who always had more chores waiting for me. One evening, while I was sweeping the floor, my uncle's wife placed a hot cup of tea on the table and yelled, "Don't go near it. You always ruin everything." But unfortunately, the cup spilled. Her anger exploded, and she beat me with a plastic hose. I cried and begged her to stop, but she didn't. That night, I sat in the dark corner of my small room, my body aching and my spirit shattered. I spoke to my parents in my mind. "Where are you? Why did you leave me all alone?" But even in that moment, I made a decision. I told myself, I will endure. I will grow up and leave this place. Years passed, each one harder than the last, but I clung to my education. I studied whenever I could, sometimes by the faint light of a candle. I excelled in school and eventually earned a scholarship to study at a boarding school far from my village. When I told my uncle and his wife, they barely cared. In fact, they seemed relieved to be rid of me. I packed my few belongings and left, feeling like I was breathing freedom for the first time. Today, after years of struggle, I am a teacher for orphaned children. I help them and give them the support I wished I had when I was their age. I still remember my painful childhood, but it has become my source of strength. I always remind myself, pain can either break you or make you stronger. I chose strength.